Welcome to Aging Insight with your host, John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by
Welcome to Aging Insight. I'm John Ross. I'm your host, here with my co-host and partner Lisa Schollmeyer, and we are elder law attorneys right here in the Arklatex. And as elder law attorneys, what we do is we try to address people's biggest concerns. Concerns like avoiding nursing home care, avoiding becoming a burden on your friends and family, and avoiding going broke trying to pay for yourself as you get older. We know that you can accomplish those goals, but you're going to need knowledge. You're going to need to know how to do it, how to navigate through that process. And Aging Insight is here to bring you that kind of information. That's what we do.
That is right. That is what we do. And today we want to talk about an issue that really a lot of folks don't really want to get into, but the reality is, as we age, we're going to need more significant medical care, and sometimes that includes a lot of in-home caregiving, and sometimes it even includes facility-based care, such as at a nursing facility, assisted living facility, something like that. And, the biggest concerns people have, aside from the deterioration of their health and maybe having to depend on others or maybe even leave their home, is how to pay for the type of care that they really need to be safe and as healthy and independent as they can be. Nothing is free, so this type of care can be expensive. So one particular program that is often looked to assist with these type of care needs is the Medicaid program. And, when you hear the term Medicaid, a lot of people, they get it confused with Medicare, but more importantly, they've heard all sorts of things from their friends, neighbors, maybe other families who have already been down this path. But there's a lot of myths out there and a lot of half-truths and frankly just falsehoods that we want to address today so that you have the information for your own planning purposes.
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is kind of talk about some of the myths that we see people bringing into our office. I'll sit there with a client and I'll say, well, why don't we talk about your different options and maybe if we could get Medicaid to pay for the cost of mom's care, then that'll reduce some of the financial strain on the family. And one of the more common responses I will get from the family is, oh, wait. I've heard that if we get mom qualified for Medicaid, that she's just not going to get the same level of care, that she's going to get less care or poor care because she's on Medicaid compared to some other person that maybe is privately paying for that same care. And that is, generally speaking, false.
That's right. In our communities, if there are facilities that provide long-term care for seniors, those facilities, as a general rule, accept both private pay and patients who are paying their way through a Medicaid payment. And the bottom line is the care is not any different. They don't put private pay patients in the posh private pay area and put the Medicaid recipients in the bare bones Medicaid area. That's just not how they do it. So in our area, it's really the same type of care.
Yeah, in fact, oftentimes you will see two people in one room where one person is private paying and the other person is receiving Medicaid benefits, and they're receiving that in the same room, on the same hall, with the same nurse. Essentially the care is identical. Now, in order to qualify for Medicaid, you do have to be in a facility that accepts Medicaid, and not all of them do. So there are some facilities that are private pay only.
Yes.
But you might be surprised which facilities accept Medicaid and which don't. Even in our community, some of the facilities that people would arguably call some of the best in town, many of those accept Medicaid. They may not advertise that, but it is available. So you do have to find a facility that takes Medicaid, but the level of care that you get is not going to change.
Well, and that brings a point, John. It's not the payment source that affects the level of care. Frankly, as with any type of situation with a loved one receiving care, it's really about the family and making sure that the care given to your loved one is appropriate and good quality care, but it doesn't rely on what the payment source is.
That's right. The biggest indicator of the quality of the care is going to be the people who are administering it. Not the building, not what their landscaping looks like or what paintings hang on the wall, but the staff people. So a lot, more important about who's doing the paying is who's doing the caregiving.
That's right.
That's going to make a much bigger difference. Plus, if you were ever felt like you were being discriminated against in some way, shape, or form because of the payer source, there's a law out there called the Nursing Home Reform Act that actually says it is illegal for a facility to discriminate against a person based on the type of care or based on the type of payer. So if a facility is treating private pay patients better or differently than they are treating, say, a Medicaid patient, not only is that not common, but it would actually even be a violation of the law and could jeopardize that facility's ability to stay in business. And so they are not going to do that. So as a general rule, not going to be any difference in care.
So I guess we're Mythbusters today. So myth busted.
That's right, myth busted.
That the payment source determines the level of care that you receive at a facility. So we have some other myths that we would like to maybe bust for you this afternoon. And what we'll do is we'll take a break and we'll come back and talk about those. So stay with us.
All our moments should be cherished. SEMA Hospice provides comfort care when you need it most with compassion, dignity, and respect. Along with Jordan Health Services, SEMA Hospice provides compassionate continuity of care. SEMA Hospice, comfort and care when it matters most.
As things get older, they require more care. This car and I have seen a lot of miles together, but because I take care of her, she runs just like she did in 1955. That's why I chose the Wadley Senior Clinic with an individualized care plan designed just for me and a convenient location off Jefferson Avenue. They have everything to keep me running like new. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey. Let the Wadley Senior Clinic keep you happy, healthy, and cruising down the road of life.
The Oaks Independent are apartments for seniors who love secure, peace of mind, and consistency in their lives. Included in the price are cable, utilities, meals, weekly housekeeping, daily monitoring, and a medical alert device. All apartments wheelchair accessible, freestanding homes in a great part of town. Live in style, comfort, and accessibility. Live independent. Find us online or call today to schedule a tour. The Oaks Independent.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana, and there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, our medical director and nurse practitioners still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
From our first moments to our final days, life's journey should be remembered free of burden and worry. Families should be cherished. SEMA Hospice provides comfort, care, dignity, and respect. Learn more about SEMA Hospice at SEMAHospice.com. SEMA Hospice, comfort and care when it matters most.
Welcome back to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Scholmeyer, your host, and I'm here with John Ross. And today we are talking about some myths that people have when it comes to accessing the Medicaid program for dealing with long-term care needs. And of course, the Medicaid program is different from Medicare, and the Medicaid program has options where you have facility-based care, which is probably what's most commonly thought of when we talk about Medicaid. And Medicaid also has some community-based options where the program helps to pay for some in-home care for a family member or senior. And so these programs are vital to many of our seniors and the families that love them and support them in order for those seniors to get the care that they need. But there's a lot of misinformation out there about Medicaid. And so in our first segment today, we addressed that there is no difference in the level and the care received, whether you're a private pay patient at a facility or a Medicaid payment patient. But you know, another myth that we see a lot is when people come in and they're looking to see, okay, I need to access some resources to help pay for care. One of the things they've heard is that they cannot give any assets away and still qualify for any Medicaid assistance. And this is a very, very common myth, and it's not exactly true, but you have to be very, very specific and cautious when you're talking about giving away assets and yet still qualifying for Medicaid. So John, let's jump into some details there.
Yeah, so, you know, we kind of start with the fact that back in 2005, when Medicaid came out with a new law called the Deficit Reduction Act, part of that law included a provision that said that if a person had given away any assets within the 5 years prior to the date that they're applying for Medicaid. So if I were applying for Medicaid today, they would look back 5 years and determine whether or not I had given away any of my assets. And if I had, there might be a penalty. In other words, there might be a period of time where Medicaid is not going to pay for me because I gave away some assets. But that's the part of the rule that lots of people have heard. What they haven't heard is that there are a number of exceptions to that rule. So for example, if I have a disabled child, so a child who has been declared disabled by the Social Security Administration, I can actually transfer assets to that child without penalty. You know, so Lisa, this is one of those situations where if I have a child who's disabled, I could give them assets, no penalty, but that also applies basically to any disabled person.
Right. You know, and it's one of those things where a lot of people, even if they've heard of this exception, they think that the disabled child is, you know, perhaps a child that maybe had a disability since birth, such as mental retardation or cerebral palsy or Down syndrome. But that's not true. You know, a lot of times by the time a senior is applying for and needing Medicaid resources, they might be in their 70s, 80s, 90s, which means their child or children are just as likely to be in their 50s, 60s, 70s themselves. And you know, so if you have a child that maybe became disabled, maybe it was a work-related injury or a chronic condition that they developed later in life, but if they are declared disabled, then they can receive those assets that you gift to them, and you can still apply for and potentially qualify for Medicaid benefits.
Right. And it doesn't matter how old the child is. Now, you can also give away assets to any disabled person who is under the age of 65. So, for example, if you have a grandchild who is disabled, a in-law who's disabled, maybe you're a son-in-law, a daughter-in-law, maybe you've just got a cousin or somebody in the family who is under the age of 65 and has also been declared disabled by the Social Security Administration, you can transfer assets to that person without penalty. So that's another exception. In Texas at least, not available in Arkansas, but in Texas at least, you can also transfer assets to certain types of college savings accounts for, say, a grandchild who's under the age of 21. So it might be one of those situations where would you rather use that money to pay the nursing home, or would you rather use that money to pay for your grandchild's college? But if you didn't know that there was an exception to that gift, you might miss out on that.
Well, but that's right, and that's why we say to be very cautious. There are exceptions out there on the gifting rules, but you have to be very cautious and make sure you absolutely qualify. For instance, on the disabled, we're not talking about a person who maybe hasn't worked in some time and says they're disabled. It has to be someone who's actually been found disabled, typically by the Social Security Administration. Also, I've had folks try to gift money to great-grandchildren for college funds in Texas, and that is not a qualified gift transfer.
Yeah,
So,
it used to be.
Used to be, yes.
But it's not. They've kind of tightened up the rules on that a little bit. And there's even some. There's even a few others. For example, let's say you're the caregiver. Maybe you're a child and you moved into mom's home to care for her. If you have been a child residing in the home, caring for that person, that parent or whoever it is, if you've been doing that care for at least 2 years, and during that 2-year period, you basically kept them out of the nursing home, then when that person needs the Medicaid, they could actually even transfer their home to you.
Yeah, to that caregiver.
Yeah, so as a way to transfer that home, and the way Medicaid looks at it is, well, your efforts kept that person out of the nursing home, which kept the state from having to pay for their care, and as a result, they ought to allow you to transfer that house to that person. So, this can be a way for the senior adult to feel like their home is protected and going to the people that they want. But this can also be a financial assistance for the caregiver. A lot of times those caregivers have given up jobs, given up their ability to contribute to their own retirement accounts and things like that. And so this can be financially beneficial for everybody involved.
Right. So again, Medicaid, I would call this a half-busted myth.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some element of truth to it.
Yes.
There is a gift penalty, but there's a number of exceptions to that gift penalty.
Right. So we're going to take our second break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about one or two other myths that you've probably heard that you need to get some real information right here. So stick with us.
With my dad, it was in a hospital setting. And in his situation, he fell into renal failure. He also helped us make the decision to be on hospice. I have to admit, it took a huge weight off our shoulders for him to be willing. That offered us a lot of comfort, along with the hospice company itself, but it gave us closure, and it helped us through the entire process.
SEMA Hospice, comfort and care when it matters most.
As things get older, they require more care. This car and I have seen a lot of miles together, but because I take care of her, she runs just like she did in 1955. That's why I chose the Wadley Senior Clinic, with an individualized care plan designed just for me and a convenient location off Jefferson Avenue. They have everything to keep me running like new. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey. Let the Wadley Senior Clinic keep you happy, healthy, and cruising down the road of life.
Welcome back to Aging Insight. I'm John Ross here with Lisa Schulmeyer, and today we're Mythbusters. We're talking about some of the things that we hear from our clients when we start talking about Medicaid as a tool to help pay for some of the care that you might need as you get older. Whether we're talking about in-home care or nursing home care or whatever it is, when you hear the word Medicaid, a lot of times people associate things that they've heard from other people. You know, they've heard that, well, they're not going to get as good a care. Well, we've busted that myth. They've heard that they can't give away assets. And well, there's some truth to that, but
Sure.
there's more to it than just you can't give away assets. So we kind of busted that myth. Another one that I get a lot of times is that, well, I heard that if I get on Medicaid, they're going to put a lien on my house. Lisa, is Medicaid going to put a lien on your house?
Most likely no.
That's right.
There is, in fact, and this is one of those myths that there's a kernel of truth in there somewhere. But when it comes to your home and receiving Medicaid, Medicaid is a program for seniors that any benefits that you receive under that program, the state considers those benefits as a loan to you and not a gift. So if you receive any Medicaid benefits and you're over the age of 65, the state will keep a tab, a running tally, if you will. And then your home is not affected at the time you apply for Medicaid and while you are receiving Medicaid. But at your death, the state, they close out your tab, so to speak, and then they basically present it to your estate. And the idea is that any assets that you had left at the time of your death, if they're part of your estate, then those assets would be subject to paying back the state that gave you some Medicaid benefits. And the problem is, it sounds simple in theory, but there's lots and lots of problems with this. It's called Medicaid estate recovery, and there's many exceptions. And there's also ways to plan ahead to where, really your estate doesn't really have anything in it at the time of your death. So, John, you want to go into that?
So the first thing is, it's not a lien. If you think about, you got a mortgage on your house, well, when you got the mortgage on your house, the bank had a lien against the house. And if you didn't pay that mortgage, the bank could take the house, period. That's because they actually, on the title there, it says that they've got to get paid off first. But now think about, say, your credit card. You go and charge something at the store and you now owe some money on your credit card. Well, your credit card doesn't have a lien on your home. It is just a debt that you owe. And if you die before you pay off that credit card, well, the credit card company still wants to get paid. And so it is a debt there that exists at the time of your death. This is the same with Medicaid. The Medicaid is a claim against your estate. And so this brings up two things. One, if your property doesn't pass through your estate, well, then your creditors can't get to it, whether we're talking about a credit card or whether we're talking about the Medicaid estate recovery. So if you have done something like a Lady Bird deed, which we talked about in a previous episode, where the house transfers automatically at death without going through probate, well, then that avoids the claim altogether. But even if you haven't done any of that sort of thing, all this is a claim against the estate. And before any claims get paid, there are a lot of rules that creditor has to follow. And the state of Texas is just another creditor. Just like a credit card or a hospital that has some back hospital bills, they are just a creditor. And before creditors get paid, there's a lot of other people that get paid.
That's right.
There's the cost of the administration that might need to be done. There's family allowances that have to be taken out, and there's all these rules that creditor has to follow. They have to do this, and then they have to do this, and then they have to do this. And if they don't follow each one of those steps in exact order in the exact time frame, then they don't get paid.
Right. You know, the paperwork, they've got to dot their I's and cross their T's, and 90% of the time they just don't.
That's right. In fact, Lisa and I were at a conference a while back, and another elder law attorney at this conference made the comment that since the Medicaid estate recovery has been law, she's never had one of her clients who had to pay the Medicaid estate claim because they just don't do it right. So that kind of brings me up to my last little point, which is people say, well, John, we just waited too long and there's nothing we can do. Well, you know, this is a good point where even after death, it's still not too late. There's never a time where it's too late to help you protect and preserve your assets. You've just got to know the rules, and you've got to know that what you've heard out there is probably false, or at least a big chunk of it.
Big chunk of it. You know, sometimes there's a kernel of truth. That's how rumors get started. But you know, it's really important to talk to a professional that really knows the ins and outs. And this has been brought to my attention just recently with your, you know, just your family attorney that kind of does a jack of all trades, or maybe a banker, financial advisor. They may be one of these, you know, myth mongers, you know, where they don't really know.
That's right.
And they're just talking about what they've heard. So it's always important to research and get good advice.
That's right. And of course, if you want some more information about Medicaid, feel free to pick up a copy of our Aging Insight magazine. There's a good article in there that talks about Medicaid. And of course, you could always call in and ask a question during our live radio show. That's Aging Insight Radio, which is on 107.1 every Saturday at noon. And of course, you can reach us out on the internet at our website at aginginsight.com. But until then, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Aging Insight program with John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by